Let me roll with this. All right. Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Fire Breathing Rob. For people that have listened to us on the radio, thanks so much for listening. Greatly appreciate that. And also subscribe to our podcast, Fire Breathing Rob, youtube.com/Fire Breathing Rob. That's FireBreathinRob. So thanks so much. This is somebody that I'm going to have on right now that I've become fond of as being part of the progressive movement also, and being a Tulsi supporter and also a Bernie supporter. I've learned to watch him. Also just interviewed the other day some people from the Convo Couch, which are also friends of his and also members of his network. This is Niko House. He is the founder of MCSN Network and the host of Mi Casa, Su Casa. And he's also was a Tulsi Gabbard 2020 surrogate. So Niko, thanks so much for all you do, first of all, and thanks so much for coming on Fire Breathing Rob.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And by the way, it's a MCSC network.
Oh, MCSC. Sorry about that.
The acronym really confuses people. I don't know why. I guess because it's kind of like a tongue twister.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It used to get me a lot too when I first started saying it. I thought it would be way easier to say Mi Casa, Su Casa Network, but people seem to have an easier time with the latter. So,
well, we'll say Mi Casa and Su Casa, and we'll go with that. And you're broadcasting from Miami, correct?
I am in Miami, yes. The Convo Couch is in LA. Right. We have another reporter in Ohio, another reporter in North Carolina, another one in Texas.
Oh, wow. So all over the place. I didn't know all those places. I know Convo Coach was in LA and you were in Florida, but I didn't know all those other places. So thanks for that.
Get around,
covering the
man,
whole,
get around.
The whole country. All right. So first of all, can you just tell the viewers that don't know you what got you into politics and why you started that YouTube channel and network for that matter?
So what got me into politics? So originally I started studying politics when I joined debate my freshman year in high school. And by the way, it was under duress. I actually wanted to be an actor. That was what I thought I was going into forensics for. And I was bamboozled, I was hoodwinked by my debate coach, who told me if I did not do debate, that I would actually not pass my speech class, which was kind of a dick move on his part. But hey, it is what it is. It worked out for the best. And what was bad was that he actually put me in the event that it's actually the hardest to win first place in, because you can't plan for your opponent. You're in a room full of 15 to 30 people on a regular debate, national or like at a national competition. Your first round is 30 people, and then you move on to a round of about 15 people, but they're like the most cutthroat competitors in the country. And so my first debate tournament, I got 4th place, which was rather surprising because I didn't know squat about politics. I just outworked everybody. After that, my debate coach was like, "That's amazing. Now you're going to be in varsity." Got my butt handed to me for about a year after that. Then it clicked. I understood politics way better my sophomore year. Nothing to the extent I did now, but I knew that at that point I wanted nothing to do with politics, actually, because I understood enough. People kept telling me, "Well, what are you, Republican or Democrat?" And believe it or not, even at 15 years old, I really didn't understand why I had to choose something. They kept telling me I had to. I was like, "Why?" They're like, "That's just the way things are." I was like, "But I don't understand. What if I don't agree with the Democrat on something?" "Well, yeah, but that you're still a Democrat though." Then I'm like, "But I actually do believe somewhat in fiscal conservatism and only spending when necessary. And I don't like the government in all my business." "Well, yeah, but," I'm like, "What? There's not an independent?" And they're like, "Yeah, but they don't get anything done." And then I come to realize, later on in my life, of course, that the independents make up the majority of the country. Now, it wasn't really until college that I being in the military and then going into college at UNC that my disdain for politics is what brought me back into the fold. Because things were getting so bad. I felt like the people who were running the country not only are selfish, but some of them who may be well-meaning, their logic and their thought process and what they presume is important, it's outdated. It's very archaic. The way they handle their business and go about their politics is just very archaic. It's fueling the duopoly And it's more of the team sports that so many people, even in classical sports today, people are more attached to individual players and their movements than the teams that they play for. And it's the same thing in politics. We're more concerned with the individuals in the party more than the actual parties themselves, because we've all kind of resigned to the fact that, like, just like in NFL, the owners are trash. So you might as well try to follow the best player and hope that that player turns the team around. And that's how I feel about politics. So, you know, after, you know, all of my experiences in my youth and then in my adulthood, I just felt like not as many people were as equipped to do the job, or at least guide the conversation as they would like to think. I decided to throw my hat into the ring. I got recruited actually to campaign for Bernie Sanders. I was the president and founder of Carolina Students for Bernie Sanders at UNC. And then I was elected the president of North Carolina Colleges for Bernie Sanders. And then we had such a massive organization and we did such a good job leadership-wise that I was actually picked to be the state director until February of 2016, when they could actually pay somebody, because I couldn't be paid to do it at the time because I was still a student at UNC. So, but I held it down until literally maybe 3 weeks before North Carolina's election. Then we discovered a DNC fraud lawsuit. The DNC fraud lawsuit was founded by myself, Jared and Elizabeth Lee Beck. And we have a few associates on the case as well. Tim Canova is actually helping us with the case now. And we're currently in the Supreme Court, but it was essentially based around the 2016 election, the fraud committed by the Democratic National Committee and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and of course Hillary Clinton, not only against Bernie Sanders, but defrauding the voters by convincing them they were behaving objectively and even-handedly in the democratic process, but also that they actually had some type of goal to beat the Republicans or beat Donald Trump, who ultimately ended up being the nominee. At the time, we didn't know. And they, you know, they're a nonprofit organization, even though they want to convince people that there's some, you know, just vague, ambiguous type of, I don't know what they like. I don't know. They keep trying to convince the world that they're not a real thing. That like we just say we're in a party, but there's no actual business to it, and that's not true. They're a nonprofit organization. They're a 501c4, and they can be held accountable for taking money under false pretense, because that's the number one reason why most nonprofits are sued and lose. And so now we're in the Supreme Court. We'll see how that goes. It was supposed to be March 26th, but they suspended all Supreme Court, all judicial, practices, I think at least until June for most states. So unfortunately, that's going to have to be put on hold. But and then of course we fast forward, and I'm a surrogate for Tulsi. So my desire to start the YouTube channel was kind of centered around all of this. I was on the ground doing a lot of activism, and I felt like there was such a huge and massively untapped market for activism in the YouTube independent media space, not just reporting on it, reporting on politics, not even just analyzing politics, but like for the first time, because it's just a new era in politics. I would like to think that I was the first actual insider, progressive independent insider who's done this stuff, who could give a different and unique perspective on what's happening and why things are unfolding the way they are, and talk about the little things that you can't really talk about or understand unless you're on the ground. And then that's whenever I came up with the idea, wow, we should have a network of activists who do this. And it's a very hard tightrope to balance, because some people may be decent analysts, but they're not activists. So even though they may be good at analysis, if you're giving an analysis based off of incomplete information, then how valuable and relevant is your analysis? And if you're a great activist, but your reporting and your analytical skills aren't that good, it's a little bit difficult for you to be a good presence in front of a camera. So it was hard. It took about 2.5 years for us to get to the point where we're at. And we have a solid, very, very solid and well-vetted team of journalists. We have the Convo Couch on our network, Taylor Hudak, who is actually the spokesperson for Susie Dawson, who was the chairwoman of the Internet Party for quite some time. She was on RT last week or 2 weeks ago. She just came back from London. for covering the Assange extradition hearings. We have a gentleman named Marcellus Wright in Texas, who primarily covers Black, or how politics affect the Black community and why Black people act a certain way towards, in different political situations. Talks about the disenfranchisement of Black people in politics. And then, of course, we have Robbie Yeager, who's our lead researcher, and is the one who broke the news that CAA and UTA, most people are familiar with CAA, they employ a host of journalists and politicians that are extremely establishment, obviously, neoliberal establishment exclusively. And then they were found in, the founders of those two agencies were the ones found in WikiLeaks to say they were going to bring the hammer down on Tulsi simply because she decided to endorse Bernie in 2016. So he was the one who found this information out and found out that Anna Kasparian is part of that agency. Jake Uger is part of the agency, Joe Biden, Simone Sanders. If anybody wants to know why Alyssa Milano went from full on Bernie bro to all of a sudden endorsing Joe Biden, trying to legitimize him, really against the Me Too movement that she was once a part of. And then all of a sudden she ends up with 2 shows that are hit shows. That's why, because they were part of that same CAA talent agency. And if you play ball, they take care of you. So that's the type of, and once again, he learned how to research because he was trying to do activism and expose people through, just research and doing the hard work, the non-sexy work that a lot of people don't like to do. So now that's basically my short history, and we're here. I was a Tulsi Gabbard surrogate, and the rest is history.
Andrew
Miami-Dade is half. It's somewhat blue, but kind of red. I don't know. They're weird.
With the Cubans.
I live in Little Havana, man. It's the weird. They're the most liberal. They think they're conservative. Yeah. But they're not.
Okay. Well, why do we hear all this stuff about Cubans saying that they're voting for Trump and all that stuff like that then?
Because so it's okay. So Cuba's history is complicated. People have to understand that just like the Venezuelans here in the States, the Cubans here in the States benefited from the quote unquote refugee acceptance that we practice, which by the way, for those of you who are curious, refugee, that's just code for you were part of the white elitist establishment from a government that we were propping up, and we don't want you to tell on us, and we don't want you to get stuck there, and that's really what happened, because a lot of these Cubans are descendants from the Batista regime, which you can only be successful if you're a part of the sugarcane cartel that he was kind of in charge of over there. In conjunction with America, sugarcane cartel is something that still hurts Florida specifically today. David Washington Schultz gets a lot of money from the sugarcane industry. But once Fidel Castro came in, regardless of how people felt about him, he desegregated Cuba. Batista was out. But what people don't know about Batista, for everybody who claims they hate communism, Batista was a communist. He belonged to the Communist Party. But he was an American puppet. And so, communism is okay if you're an American puppet. We've already seen this. Now, what they associate communism with is Fidel's revolution, which I'm sure is probably triggering, considering a lot of them lost their businesses, maybe lost their official positions, a lot, and of course it's a revolution. So it gets violent, it gets muddy, and it gets bloody. Unfortunately, that's just how they are. But so now Cuba is 70% Black or mixed race. Whereas before it was the opposite. It was, 15, 20% were Black, but they were segregated and there was absolutely no opportunity. Now Cuba's legislature is 50% male, 50% female. Something we could not even come close to boasting about here. Now they have one of the best medical schools, if not the best medical school in the world. But here, Cubans associate anything not Republican with communism, or their idea of what communism is, not even real communism. And so they vote for Trump, although they believe in single payer healthcare. For example, I met a Cuban here who believes firmly in single payer healthcare. He doesn't call it that, but that's what he said. We should have a healthcare where it's mostly government guarantee. I mean, and maybe we should reduce the military budget to do it. And it doesn't have to be 100% ran by the government, but 80%. And we maybe have a nonprofit chip in to cover stuff. I'm like, Sir, that's single payer health. No, that's communist. I'm talking about something that's, guaranteed for everybody because we pay our taxes. Maybe we should get something. I'm like, sir, that's single payer, but okay. But,
Right.
propaganda is real, man. It's real.
Agreed. I want to talk about the COVID-19. Again, another question on that. What do you believe our country should do to solve this? We heard as a Tulsi surrogate this year, Tulsi came out with the UBI bill. I believe Mitt Romney supported that or was also co-sponsoring it. We also heard Rashida Tlaib just came out with a bill. Bernie's come out with a bill. What do you feel like is the best bill to solve this?
So far, Tulsi's is the only bill that I've seen that actually addresses the structural, reality for the everyday consumer. And hers, I believe, is about either $1,000 or $1,200 a month until the crisis has expired. I did not like Ro Khan's legislation because that's means tested. A lot of people fall through the cracks and actually becomes infinitely more expensive for the government, right? Because you got to put everybody through this bureaucracy to get, and then everybody wouldn't even qualify. And then on top of that, that screws out the gig economy people. So Tulsi's would make sure that every adult 18 or older would get $1,000 a month. Romney's is close to Tulsi's, except for his a one-time payment, then they reassess and then pay it out again. So it's very similar, but not exactly the same. But Mitt Romney does support Tulsi's legislation in the House. Bernie recently called for the $2,000 payment until the crisis is over, which, by the way, congratulations to Bernie. I'm glad he's finally on the UBI train. And I do think that a lot of people who were so against UBI, which some people were legitimately against it because of the way that Yang proposed it. But I was always telling people, like, look, Yang can propose it this way, but that's not how it's going to leave Congress. That's just not how things work. But the idea of UBI is still extremely important, and it should be coupled with the federal jobs guarantee. Why? Because of situations exactly like this one. This is like, I know Yang is somewhere, if he's probably sitting in his room being petty, like, I told y'all this is something we need to make sure that Americans have money to put back into their own pockets. We have a lot of small businesses, like small business restaurants right now that are still open. You can order to go. That money could keep those businesses open. But instead, whatever money people have left are going to go to making sure they're going to go to the debtors that are going to get bailed out anyway with our money. So they're going to get our money, then they're going to get bailed out with our money. Rashida Tlaib, I haven't seen Rashida Tlaib legislation. Who else? And then, of course, the party leaders both have introduced legislation, and both of them are absolute gutter trash. Both of them. The Republicans are making a big deal saying, oh, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to save the country. Mind you, of course, most of the Republicans were voting against Obama's bailout, which was also, it was better, but it granted amnesty and nobody got really hemmed up for what they did to the economy, and then we weren't taken care of. There was no protections in there for us. Whereas both of the Democrats and the Republicans legislation, they're both trying to take away liberty from us in those legislations simultaneously, right? Like, this is a time to introduce pork barrel. Come on, bro. Like, come on. Like, let's stay focused. I think Nancy Pelosi tried to do something for mail-in ballots. But if you know anything about the Democrats, that's one of the main ways they rig, actually. Mail-in ballots, they just take them and put them somewhere. My Pasta tried to chase down exactly the chain of custody for mail-in ballots in California, got to an office. They were like, where do they go from here? Oh, we don't know. What do you mean we don't know? Who counts them? Mm-hmm. What do you mean? Like, and that's what that's all the stuff we were dealing with as far as UBI. But I believe that the trajectory is where Tulsi said, protect people from evictions, protect people from, having their mortgage defaulted on, make sure that people have, money to go out and go grocery shopping, to order food, keep some of these businesses alive. And of course, people should not be dipping into their savings account because the federal government mismanaged a pandemic. That's not what that's for. That's if we have an emergency, not the federal government. Because if the corporations have an emergency, who the hell's bailing them out? So
Yeah.
the logic still applies. So I think that's it. And as far as the medical side is concerned, I'm not a medical expert. I actually, believe it or not, I kind of side with Korea. Korea is like, we're not going to do a quarantine because that's an anti-democratic. And I kind of agree with them. I believe that maybe states should be able to limit travel. That's something that a state could decide. And states' decisions and local politician decisions, that's a little bit more close to home than the federal government making a decision to quarantine everybody. And even with the state deciding that, maybe like Florida, I like the way Ron DeSantis handled it, right? He says, look, clubs closed, beaches for the most part closed, restaurants only open for to go. If you're out at that point, it's probably because you need to be out, or you're taking personal responsibility and ensuring that the person that you may be going to somebody's house, but you're going to take personal responsibility and ensure that person does not have it, so you won't further contract the virus. So I like that approach to the situation rather than saying you better stay in the house. But I agree with Tulsi, Bernie, Rashida, Ilan, and even AOC that this is ridiculous because a lot of these issues that we're having is because we don't have Medicare for all. And that's every other country with the national healthcare system is not having the type of issues that we are having. We're like, let's go fight it with the National Guard. What?
Yeah, what are they going to do?
So.
Yeah. Niko, question about Bernie. All right, because we brought him up quite a few times throughout this interview. Where is Bernie now? I mean, he is doing a lot of town halls, and I commend him for that. He has taken a leadership position, but what happened to the campaign? There's no talk about Joe Biden's asleep at the wheel. He's not doing anything. There's no pushing at him. Fiorella put up a meme. It says Joe hiding or something like that.
Joe be hiding, yeah.
Yeah. And where is he hiding? Like, it's just crazy. But Bernie should be hitting a Medicare for all, jobs guarantee, all his policies about socialism right now. This is all the stuff that's coming back into the fold that the Republicans and Trump are taking handle of. They're going to the left, whereas you said Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
And Chuck Schumer going to the right. They're worried
about
businesses.
And I also think it should be remember that that's not Trump's. So the Mitch McConnell's bill is not Trump's bill. I think some people will like. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of Trump, but like I don't like when people falsely associate something that Mitch McConnell does with Trump. Like I know for a fact that if it was up to the Republicans, we would have went to all-out war with Iran, and Trump did not want to do that per se, at least not in that fashion. So, but with Bernie, so here's what a staffer told me. Actually, two staffers and an insider in the campaign. Bernie was considering dropping out, and he had already all but made his decision at that point. That's why after Tuesday, you didn't see any fundraising emails, no media, like nothing about, at least not his campaign. He had even, he cussed out that reporter for even asking about it. And even though he said, "Oh, I'm going to focus on the pandemic," like, yeah, I get it. Like, but you could have just said that, but you seem like you were frustrated because you knew that you were being rushed to concede. And I'm sure that he was strategizing to ways to get something like all politicians do before he does concede. But I knew that was the case. Tulsi dropping out was a big signal, especially because she decided to support Biden, and saying basically, hey, this is just this. It is what it is. We can't ignore it. And Bernie doesn't really have a chance to win. Like not in a race at this point. Maybe if Biden is forced to quit, because God knows it looks more and more likely every day. But he doesn't have a chance to win, not because of any like measurable deficiency compared to Biden. He's getting the money. He has a volunteer base. He has the passion. He even has the policies. But the reality of the situation is until Bernie is going to address election fraud in a substantive way against both Democrats and Republicans, he's not going to win. All the states that he lost this time around that he had won in 2016, especially in states where he had demolished Hillary, caucus states, states that were doing mandatory paper ballots even, he got either beat or they're somehow claiming that Biden was much closer than what he is. Hell, look at Washington. Washington Bernie, I mean, handed Hillary her whole behind. And I would argue easily that Hillary's much more popular than Biden is. You know, at least with the average Democrat.
Right.
And there he won. And then the next morning, oh, by the way, we just handed Biden some more delegates. Of course, they changed their system last minute. Even in Iowa, they were forced to take that app by the DNC. That's why they're suing Tom Perez right now. California, they decided to do a whole new voting system without testing it, by the way. And when people were calling out all the problems with that system, they lied. Luckily, Paz and Fiorella caught them lying multiple times and have it on camera. But those are just a few examples where I mean, I met somebody while I was in California covering the election. I was just out to dinner. I overheard him saying, hey, when I got to the polling place, because you get a mail-in ballot out there, and then you can take it and file it, or you can mail it back. He decided to go take it personally. Got there, his name wasn't registered in the system. They tried to give him an iPad to vote on at that time. That's ridiculous. I said, so nothing paper? No, nothing. They wouldn't even let him vote for anything but the president.
Wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, so this is what we're dealing with. And Tulsi tried to introduce the Secure America's Elections Act, which would have had paper ballots, automatic audits, and open source machines, right? So what that does is, so the paper ballots is for accuracy, and the open source machines are for accountability. Because once you slide those through the machine, and then of course the person will get a paper ballot back up, and then the county or the precinct gets a paper ballot back up. If anyone tries to go into those machines and changes it, you know, blockchain technology, the moment you do something, it blocks it and changes it, and you can never erase it. You can just do something over it, but you can always trace it. So if somebody tried to rig an election, we would be able to see that they tried to rig it, who they rigged it for, where they rigged it from, and then hold that person accountable. And that's what we need right now. Tulsi, and you know, it wasn't a perfect bill, but it was the best bill that's been introduced in the United States for quite some time. And it was ignored by Bernie. And the only time he ever talks about election fraud is if the Republicans are committing it in some way, form, or fashion. And then he goes on once again to pretend as if the Democrats never do it, except for the Democrats have done it primarily to not only hurt him, because this is where it irritates me a bit about Bernie, because sometimes he thinks selfishly, and and it's not even strategic when he does it. But it's not hurting you. It's hurting that next person who could be as popular as AOC, like Nabila Islam out of Georgia, Shahid Buttar running against Nancy Pelosi, Tim Canova here in South Florida. This is who it's hurting. That coalition that you were going to need in Congress to get any of your legislation passed. And that's who you're really hurting when you are not addressing election integrity. These people are going to be here a lot longer than Bernie is, because Bernie's not a spring chicken. And what the message shows, that if you can raise that much, when you can break every single electoral record in a Democratic primary, from registrations to amount of unique donations, to the amount of total money raised, to crowd turnout, to viral video footage. I mean, if you can do all that, have the policies, and still lose, that is a smoke signal to everybody involved that there's nothing that a progressive can do, you know, and we just should accept that.
You just put out a new video yesterday, why Biden will not be president for long. Can you talk about that video for the viewers that haven't watched it yet, and why you believe that? So
Joe Biden, surprisingly enough, his staff has been putting out a bunch of stuff on Twitter and Facebook saying, oh, he's just looking for a way to connect with the voters and, you know, technical stuff. And he that's why he's been missing, except for he had a call with 60 donors in Georgia. So clearly he at least knows how to use a phone, right? And on that call, he said he had talked to Barack Obama because it was such a big issue that he was worried that the person who he picks as VP needs to be ready to do it from day one. Like the moment they're picked as VP, like not even after they get elected, but like even potentially stepping into the nomination, because he said age is a factor, but I don't think think it's just the age factor. I think the age is a huge factor, but I'm looking at Bernie and I don't feel I don't think that Bernie looks or sounds anything like you would think. They're 10, 15 years apart. And so a lot of people will make the argument, oh, well, every vice president has to be ready to step in on the, no. You don't signal that to your donors that you might not serve a full term, right? Unless you're trying to say, well, who do y'all want? Because they're going to basically replace me and I need to figure out who y'all are okay with. Like, that's what that sounds like to me. And after being gone for so long from the public eye, kind of hiding, doing what he's been doing with this virus that is a very serious thing. And it's affecting primarily his demographic. And politicians are clearly not exempt from this. Rand Paul, hell, the Republicans lost majority because they're all self-quarantined at this point in the Senate. So it's not, and he's been interacting, and because it takes 14 days for the virus to make you symptomatic and display any symptoms, we don't know if he could have contracted this virus, or maybe he thinks he might have contracted the virus or been in contact with someone who could have contracted the virus. And if that's the case, who he picks as VP, if he picks him soon, will likely be the nominee. And I think that, and because of the unfortunately high kill rate for this virus for people his age, he signaled to the establishment, y'all, I might not be here. And so we got to pick somebody who will suit your needs. And that's frustrating for me because I'm like, bro, if this was Bernie, if Bernie would have even done anything close to that. Bernie had a stent put in his heart where it took him 2 days to recover, and they made it seem like he had a heart transplant. This man, Biden, has had aneurysms. He's had brain aneurysms, but it's fine. Yeah, except for he seems like he's kind of experiencing dementia right now. Like my grandma, who's a little bit younger than him, but it's like, okay, this man is not right. Like my grandmother's saying this. My great grandmother at 93 years old, God bless her soul, she's passed away now at 95. But my great grandmother was sharper than Joe, and she was 93, was sharper than what Joe Biden is right now. And yet we had the options of a young woman who's ready to do the job more than both of them from day one, all three of them, I should say. But now we have Bernie, who's still in the race, at least officially, and we're still pretending like this should even be a debate. How about the guy who is not hiding, who is still in Congress doing his damn thing, who is speaking out, who is not only doing that, but it's also right that people you have around you is just as important. And although a little questionable in some of the people he puts around him at times, Bernie is, but his people right now are putting him in a position to speak to the people.
So why is he staying in the race, Niko?
Why? I think that the Biden situation is now why he's saying. I think before he was legitimately trying to figure out, what do I do? Also, I think they were waiting for the last checks to go out to the current staff members especially because of the situation with the coronavirus. The reality of the situation is a lot of people are not going to be able to get jobs or return back to their old job. Yeah. So I think that's a major factor, and I completely sympathize with that. Good campaigns always give a grace period before they drop out to ensure that they're taking care of their staffers. You want to make sure your staff knows, which is how I knew that at least it was being considered. But now I think it's different. After the last 2 live streams from Joe Biden and that interview he just recently did, I think a lot of people are like, oh shit, okay, Bernie, do not drop out. And even though I said that it's likely that he will, and it was much more likely last week than it is this week for sure, but he's still likely. I don't want him to drop out. Like I said, it just sends the wrong message. After all, since 2015 up until this point, you have had so many people come from that movement, but not everybody's AOC or Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, who, by the way, at least Rashida and Ilhan were perfectly fine, where they were. AOC was a bartender, but even she was in a decent situation. Most people make more sacrifices from this movement and they will never see a return from it, and I'm fortunate because I gave up law school. I was homeless at one point, pursuing the DNC fraud lawsuit and covering election fraud and election integrity issues on the ground. I am fortunate to be in the position I'm in today. Most people are not in my position, or the position of Pasta and Fiorella, and some other people who made those sacrifices, gave up their jobs. Fiorella was a model and an actress. Pasta was actually doing some acting, but also managed a really nice restaurant, making six figures. Kim Iverson was a six-figure nationally syndicated radio show host. But a lot of people who became dedicated to telling the truth and fighting against the establishment because of that movement that he started in 2015 made sacrifices. And a lot of them are not like us, where they have these following. Their last hope, for any type of immediate change is Bernie. And that's why I feel like he shouldn't drop out and should fight Biden to the very end. What the hell does he have to lose at this point?
Right. 3 more questions left, but that question went right into, and you answered it right into this question. We saw Tulsi endorse Joe Biden within the past couple of days. Bernie, he's probably going to end up he is going to end up endorsing Joe Biden, when he drops out, or, unless something happens with Joe Biden. How do you give people like me and other young people hope? I know it's not really your job, but advice on giving other people hope. That I donated to Tulsi as well. It wasn't as much as Bernie, but I did donate to her, and I believe in her cause, and I believe she's a fine leader, and I hope she runs for something else someday. I know she's not going to be in Congress pretty soon, but I think she's
going to run for governor.
Okay, that would be great.
I think so.
Yeah, so that would be great. So, but how do you give hope to people like me that they donate a lot to Bernie and Tulsi, and they're both, if Tulsi runs for governor, that's great, but they both will probably be out of the political eye soon.
So I would say this. I would say it's important for us to use this as an opportunity to decentralize the movement. And what do I mean by that? To be quite honest, it's actually not a good thing that all of our hopes are kind of reliant on Bernie or Tulsi. They were like a last resort type of situation, right? They galvanized the movement, and people believe, because of all the failures of the past, that that we needed somebody to kind of re-energize the public and get them involved in politics again, and believe that they can affect some type of change. But people forget the greatest victories were not won in Congress by a congressperson, or in Congress, or in the executive office by a president, or sometimes by the judiciary. But even then, it's because they were swayed in one way or another by the public opinion. Marriage equality just became a thing. 2013, right? 2012, 2013. It started, I was there. It was in North Carolina where it started. I was actually there at the time. That was because somebody fought and fought and fought for something they believed in. And then the judiciary was like, they're right? Hell, interracial marriage. Somebody fought. Ending of segregation, fought and fought and fought. Martin Luther King was not a politician. Malcolm X was not a politician. Huey P. Newton, the Black Panthers, they were not politicians. They fought for what they believed in. And even though the movement was focused, it was decentralized. And they had their leaders, but they were by committee. It was like, you're not officially the leader, but I mean, everybody, you keep saying a bunch of things that we all believe in, so we're just gonna follow you. What's your title? I'm a reverend. Yeah, I'm not religious, but you're still cool. So we're gonna follow you anyway. And that's what Martin Luther King had. And when you look throughout history, oftentimes, if I'm being honest, when you're in political office, and unless you're in very rare situations like Mike Gravel, who with the Pentagon Papers, being in that office will stifle your ability to make the change that you want to see, right? But when you are in office, and when people outside of the political field that are just activists and organizers, when they're making that change and pushing that public opinion, then that is your job in office. Say, look, y'all, it's happening, and you can kind of help legislate the view of the people. But what Bernie was kind of like a top-down situation. Although it was a grassroots movement, it was still a top-down situation. I didn't think Medicare for all was possible until Bernie broke it down. I didn't think that free college was possible till Bernie presented some real ideas. I did not, I understood the economy, but from this, it doesn't matter. I went to a top school, and still my idea of the economy and their idea of the economy for the most part is wrong. They don't know how it actually works. I learned all that and even more after, and not from Bernie, but just from the people I've met through joining that movement because of Bernie. Now I think that people's eyes have been open to what we deserve. It's much different than back then. We were just kind of going through the motions, assuming that this is just how things are, this is the way they're supposed to be. And I don't know if people are going to go back to that. I think that this movement against Biden and the progressive movement is real. They're not voting for him, and the Democrats can get every single vote. Doesn't, like, from Democrats. Would not matter. They're only 28% of the country.
Yeah.
They got to get independent. So now I think that we move into the not so sexy part, which is let's organize. And we know it's possible because we've seen it. We've seen it done by Bernie to a large degree. We've seen it done by Nina with Our Revolution when she was there. We've seen it done by Tulsi by being able to outlast literally every other presidential candidate. And by the way, not just outlasting, but filling up rooms until the coronavirus became, kind of where it's at today. Still filling up rooms, 400, 500 people, still hitting her donation marks. So she was able to organize in a way to show like these people are hungry for change. So now we as a group or as people on the ground have to use that momentum that they started and carry that into the future.
To do that, Niko House, thanks so much. Can you just tell the viewers where they can find more about you, about whether it's on YouTube, Rockfin, your website, all that stuff?
So you can find me on YouTube at MCSC Network with Niko House, or you can just Google me, NIKOHOUSC. You can find my show there along with all the other shows on the MCSC Network. By the way, we are actually introducing a new show here pretty soon called Debunked. So that'll be on there as well, which is going to be a dope show where we just debunk all the nonsense about the system and what people believe the system acts like. And we'll even have some fun with it, just showing how not different the Democrats and Republicans are. Also, you can find me on rockfin.com/Niko, ROKFIN.com/Niko, NIKO. And there we'll actually, I think it's going to be on Thursdays, I think starting next week. We're actually going to have a Rockfin exclusive day where we'll have exclusive live streams only for Rockfin, different, coverage exclusively for Rockfin. And that's a platform that really takes care of its creators. So if you want to take care of your creator as well, one, go follow them on Rockfin because a lot of them are already there. Status Quo just joined Rockfin. Graham Elwood's on Rockfin. Ron Placone is on Rockfin. Combo Couch is on Rockfin. Like I said, Mike Cernovich is on Rockfin. So a lot of, UFC and MMA and other sports commentators and analysts are on Rockfin. And so we have a couple of big names coming in soon as well. So like big. So, if you want to help your creator, go to Rockfin, subscribe to them, show them some love there. Other than that, just follow me on Twitter at Niko, NIKOCSFB. And, a lot of my updates go there as well.
Niko, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.